And hello once more, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to episode 50 of A Druids Dozen. Yeah, my name's John. I am known in certain circles as the Rock Druid. I have a couple of radio shows. There's the Sunday Rock Show on BCFM 93.2 FM in Bristol in the UK, syndicated around the world via the Rock Radio Network. And then there's the Rock Druid Show on astroradio.earth. An international science and music, rock music based station. And basically I started these during lockdown about a year ago, just kind of waving various records in front of the camera and talking about them for a bit, just to kill a bit of time. I have a small but quite loyal viewership, both on YouTube and on Facebook, so I've kept it going. And it's because it's the 50th anniversary show, and around about a year since I started, because there's a couple of weeks that I did a few other bits and pieces, I thought I'd do something a bit different. And this week I'm going to explore my love of compilation albums. Now, it all started out when I was in mid-teens, started discovering the wonders of rock and metal, and decided to kind of start collecting records, etc., as you do. And not having a vast amount of money, sort of Saturday jobs and being a student, etc., wanted a way I could kind of experience as much different music as possible. And then I got this one, which is going to be our first one today. One of my early purchases. This is Kilowatts on CBS, a double compilation album. And I picked this up because it had a couple of bands on here that I knew, and a couple of bands on here that an artist that people have recommended. I picked it up because it has some Judas Priest on it. Only the one track. It contains Rapid Fire from British Steel. But then also it had on here, people have been mentioning a guy called Ted Nugent. So if you like that, you like Ted Nugent. And yeah, there's a Ted Nugent track on here. And then another band I'd heard of but not actually heard at the time, Aerosmith. And on here there's was it No Surprise from Night in the Ruts. Took it home and gave it a listen, and started to find some real gems on this album. There's let's have a look. There's I'll show you the back. There's not much on the inside, just a couple of, oh yeah, there is on there. There's the back anyway, just a track list and a bit of a blurb about CBS's roster. So that one's just a plain sleeve. There's a sleeve on here which gives you the other sleeve on here is that which gives you a kind of rundown of the artists on the compilation. Yeah, started exploring it, and one of the bands that I suddenly discovered was a band called Blue Oyster Cult. On here there's the live version of Godzilla from the Some Enchanted Evening album, and it blew my mind, and I have become a massive Blue Oyster Cult fan ever since, and this is what triggered it off. Other acts on here that really interesting things. There's the Boys with a track called Two Whilst the Time. Still an obscure band, only ever did one album. I've got the album, I tracked it down after hearing the title track on here. Absolutely storming kind of US biker rock band. Molly Hatchet. This was my introduction to Molly Hatchet. This album was also got the Joe Perry project. Let the music do the talking. Joe Perry, of course, the former Blue Oyster Cult, not Blue Oyster Cult, Aerosmith guitarist. Yeah, Trust on here, Eric Derringer, Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, Trooper. Yeah, bit of Journey for a bit of the AR kind of side of it. But not only did this album, which is only about the 4th or 5th album I ever brought, opened my eyes to a lot of new music, it also kind of led me to kind of explore more compilation albums. So what I've done from this one, I've also selected 11 others, sort of at random. There's a couple I chose on purpose, the other ones I grabbed at random, like I'm going to wave in front of the camera. But anyway, we're kicking off with the, so this is the first one, Kilowatts, 1980, CBS Records. Now, this one is a fairly recent addition to the collection. This was a charity shop find from a couple of years ago. This is California Jam 2 Also on CBS. This one dates from 1978. There's the front. There's the back. Open it up, there's a gatefold with band pics and people performing at the California Jam 2 in 1978. Now, California Jam, if you don't know, was a series of American rock festivals held at the, I can't remember where it was actually was held, some racetrack in California, motor racing circuit, and you know, legend has it it inspired the kind of holding of the Monsters of Rock at Donington. And you know, it didn't happen every year. I think it was 74, 78, and I think there's been a couple of others since. But yeah, they'll get a load of bands, stick them on a festival, yeah, it's a festival, what do you expect? I've got a few festival albums. This is the only one I've dragged out today. I've got a few from the various Reading festivals, I've got a couple of them Doningtons and other festival events, but I'll drag this one out because it's an interesting one, and it's a fairly new one to my collection. So yeah, basically on here you've got music from, not the full lineup, from a couple of bands that aren't on this, that were at the festival, names of which have escaped me, but on here you've got some Santana, opens up a couple of tracks, fantastic, I love Santana, and his performances on here of Juanego and Dance Sister Dance are pretty shit hot, to be honest with you. Leads on to Dave Mason, guy that I don't know that much about. I just know he's an English folk singer that is far more popular in the States than he is in the UK. But there's a couple of sweet tracks on here, Let It Go, Let It Flow, and We Just Disagree, which are they're sweet little songs that I quite like. And like I said, I usually look at these compilation albums to sort of explore music I wouldn't normally do. Bearing in mind, you know, days before kind of the internet and kind of downloads and that, unless you with only limited radio broadcast when these albums came from, you know, these compilations were the best way to find new music. Anyway, moving on, you've got a couple of crackers from Heart from their folky rock period. Was it Love Alive and a superb version of Little Queen on here, absolutely brilliant. Next up, we've got some Ted Nugent again. A guy that I've got a difficult relationship with. The guy's politics and attitude really gets on my tits, and he's not the sort of bloke that I would ever really want to associate myself with. But on the other hand, I cannot deny the guy is a fantastic guitarist and writes some cracking songs. On here you've got Free For All, from the title track from the album, unfortunately without the Meatloaf vocal, and then you've got Snakeskin Cowboys, which is from his debut solo album. You know, and again, there, don't like saying it, but you know, Huge is a fantastic player, even though I do think his politics and his conspiracy theories kind of do tend to suck and get on my tits. But you know, I'll continue my awkward relationship with the Huge. Moving on to the next side, we've got 3 tracks by Aerosmith. Same Old Song and Dance, Draw the Line, Chip Away the Stone. Just, it's Aerosmith. Performance is pretty good. And like Aerosmith are always a band that I've had a soft spot for ever since I first heard them on that album there. So yeah, love a bit of Aerosmith. Then you got a really interesting one, Jean-Michel Jarre plonking his way through Oxygen. Part 5. Yeah, weird, but there again, it's a kind of festival bill, so what do you expect? Nice bit of hippie keyboard synth work to probably provide a bit of a mellow moment. On to the last side, you've got, it's really interesting, you've got a couple of tracks by Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. Guy that, even though he keeps cropping up on a lot of these compilation albums that I've got, I've never really got around to exploring. I like what I hear, don't get me wrong, but it's just something I've never really kind of got around to getting into. Maybe I should. If you know Frank Mahogany's Mahogany Rush, where do I start? New World Anthem maybe? I don't know. Anyway, it does a built-in version of the old Chuck Berry classic Johnny Be Good on here. And then the really interesting is Rubicorn at the end, who I hadn't heard of until I heard this album. Found out they're a short-lived funk rock fusion band, ex-members of Sly and the Family Stone. And you know, I'd heard of Sly and the Family Stone, of course, but never heard of Rubicorn. Got a couple of tracks on here, Never Gonna Leave and Too Hot to Handle, both of which are quite sweet tunes, and they meet the kind of, I haven't got around to doing it yet, but it's reminding me to try and get hold of some more of their stuff, because I like what I hear. I think I did one album, I'm not sure. Again, let me know in the comments. But anyway, yeah, California Jam, CBS Records, 1978. Yeah, pretty good one. Now, this one, the next two represent kind of the classic new over British heavy metal albums, compilations. Apologise, this is Heavy Metal Records, Heavy Metal Heroes, 1981. There's the front, there's the back, no inner sleeve or anything. Yeah, knackered cover, hence the reason why I only paid about £2 for it rather than the true market value of this, which is, well, these days it's about 50-60 quid, but or so I've been told. But you know, even back when I got this a few years ago, a good few years ago actually, you know, I got it dirt cheap because of the knackered cover. And and this is kind of my favourite types of compilation, the more obscure new over British heavy metal label samplers, of which this is one. A lot of bands that are probably never going to get into the mainstream, but are well worth exploring. Thanks to this, I've discovered the likes of the Handsome Beast, Twisted Age, Jaguar, Bitch's Sin, Metal Mirror, Witchfinder General, all stuff that, you know, bands I was only vaguely aware of and would have never heard had I not picked this up, and it spurred me on to actually go and buy the full albums, because like I said, when I first bought this, now I got this second hand around about 1985, and I'd only heard of a couple of the bands on here. I actually got to admit I did have the couple of Handsome Beast bits and pieces, but yeah, but bands like Buffalo, Split Beaver, etc. kind of spurred me on to tracking some of their stuff down and adding their albums to my collection. Yeah, bit of a classic. Okay, the production on this one's not brilliant because it's Heavy Metal Records. They were small at the time. They were a very small, up and coming Birmingham-based label, but yeah, just pretty good stuff, and a bit of a must-have for all new over British heavy metal collectors. From that one's early-ish in the new over British heavy metal collection. This one from 1987 is technically about a year or so after, but it kind of still ties in because, you know, kind of the new over British heavy metal, there isn't any set date you can turn around and say it died here. It just kind of petered out from like that 85 onwards. And another one of the more obscure labels that were banging stuff out during that period were Ebony Records, and they brought out a load of compilation albums. Ebony would sign bands, and I know this because I'll tell you in a minute how I know this, would sign bands, get them into their normally get them into their studio up in Hull, and basically you would lay down a couple of tracks. They'll put one on the on a compilation album, brought them out basically yearly, I think, and then well, 6 months or maybe even, and then the ones that got the you know, prick the notice of the reviewers and the you know, sort of magazines, etc., radio play, would get you know, they'll offer the better contracts too. Now, I'm on this one. I was in a band called Covenant. We were a kind of, well, originally a thrash metal band, but then we lost our drummer, and Chris, our guitarist, had this great idea of getting in a drum machine, because we got sick of, we spent a few months auditioning drummers that, Chris was a bit of a perfectionist. He didn't really like any of the drummers. Me and the bass player, oh God, yeah. Anyway, we got in a a drum machine, and it gave us an interesting sound, gave us a kind of almost kind of proto-industrial approach to it. We were kind of you know, looking back at it now, actually there's reviews of this album and a couple of demos that we did floating around on the internet that are comparing us to kind of like Primordial Ramstein, which you know, had we known, we could have played on that, but we didn't. Yeah, we were young and innocent and naive. Anyway, our contribution breaker is on here. Unfortunately, it's Daryl Johnson, the producer and owner of Ebony Records, was a bit of a, I don't know, I don't want to say idiot because he was a nice guy, but put it this way, the track, we recorded about 4 songs over the course of 2 days for Ebony, and basically we had a couple of songs that were kind of nice sort of 2-3 minute metal headbang numbers, but he chose his favourite track, which was a track called Breaker, which was at a playing time of about 7 minutes, and he chainsaw edited it down to about 2.5 to fit on here, but doing some rather strange edits, cutting out 2 verses, which means the lyrics make no sense. He was cut out the really good Chris Barrett guitar solo and Bryant guitar solo, sorry, and leaving a kind of rather pointless kind of riffing section in the middle. Yeah, I don't know if he did it for any of the other bands on here, but he definitely did it to us. But anyway, the rest of the bands on here, again, you got some quite sweet ones. There's a couple of bands like Frozen Eyes, which were Swedish. I think Cerebus was Swedish as well. So you've got a couple of Swedish bands, the rest are British. Interesting highlights include a band called Mark II, which are kind of almost kind of like punk metal fusion with a kind of rather messed up blues track called Twilight Zone. You got Cry with Party After Dark, who went on to have sort of minor success. Kamikaze Sue, Mova Strip were an interesting band as well. I think they were Swansea based, kind of prog metal. Yeah, overall it's not a bad album. Yeah, it's not. It's like a lot of these compilations. It can be hit or miss. It's you know, you got the high points, you got the low points, but it's interesting. And a lot of these bands, you know, the tracks that are on these kind of compilation albums, they're the only things they ever actually released on vinyl. So you know, no wonder that again this album goes for silly money now. There was only about 300 pressed apparently of this series. You know, I've got Pop Volume 1, never found a copy of Volume 2. Same colour, just red. It's red instead of green. And oh yeah, artwork Graham D from a band called Blood Money, their lead singer. But anyway, yeah, the Metal Collection Volume 3, Ebony Records, 1987. A bit of a kind of collector's item these days, and one I'm proud to be part of. Okay, we have another type of compilation album coming up now. This is Still Crazy from Abstract Records. From, oh god, anyway, there's the front with a nice Dali-esque picture. There's the rather boring back. Whip this out. 1982 this came out. Yeah. And I have never heard of Abstract Records before or since this album. But I suspect I know the origins of this. This is only me surmising, but I know this practice did go on. Basically, you'll get a record label would want to put out, or someone will want to put out a compilation album on their own label or whatever. And basically they would shop around various kind of artists, other record labels, asking for tracks either pro bono or kind of cheap, or even free to stick on their compilation album. And sometimes some of the smaller labels or band, or even not major labels that were major labels that were kind of trying to push their latest signings or latest sort of artists would agree, because it helped get the name out, and you know, kind of thing. Anyway, this one, pay no more than $3.99 for this record. Can't remember when I brought it. It could well have been around about the time this came out, or pretty soon after. And it's okay. There's nothing. Well, there is some interesting stuff on here. Again, interesting set. Opens up with the Rods. You know, Dave Feinstein's band, Canadian power trio. Track called "Get Ready to Rock and Roll" from their superb debut album. Then you got a Twisted Sister, "I'll Never Grow Up," an early single. I think it's on Under the Blade, but I'm not sure. Stampede, band that kind of became sort of like, oh, what was it? Yeah, Phil Lynnett's Grand Slam. Most of the members came out there. The members went on to play with bands like Dare and Magnum, etc. Starfighters, Alley Cat Blues, cracking track from their debut album. Just kind of, again, buying this album, hearing that Starfighters track, made me go out and track down the Starfighters stuff. Classic Canadian band Anvil with Bedroom Games. Then you got Brian Johnson and Geordie. You know, long after Geordie had broken up and Johnson had joined AC/DC, doing Keep On Rocking. We got Praying Mantis with Running for Tomorrow. Crocus with Bedside Radio from the was it? No, I can't remember the name of the album. The one with the two cars crushed on the front. Closing tracks, an early Girl School single, Take It All Away. And then you got The Trek, a band out of Bristol, with Mean Gasoline, and the lead guitarist on there is a guy called David Seawood, who was for a few years was my sort of like sidekick guitarist in Alien Stashed Him. Again, The Trek only released a couple of singles, one of which turns up on here. So yeah, another interesting one. Yeah, not brilliant, but enough to make you go, "Oh, that's cool." You know, and again, it's got some quite interesting, rare tracks that I getting into bands I'd never heard of had I not brought this. Next up is another one from the very early days of my collection. This is Live and Heavy by it's from NEMS Records, NEMS. There's the front. There's the back. So this is, I think, 1980-81, around about then. 1980. And you got little bits of, you know, it tells you, yeah, nice photographs of the band and where they were recorded. Now, actually, I'll read them off here. I'll put that up like that and read them off here. Now, you've got side one, you've got Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water, the Made in Japan version. Nazareth, doing Razamanaz, not sure where that one comes from, it might have been Nazareth Live. Motorhead White Line Fever, which at the time was unreleased. Eventually came out as part of the What's Wordsworth sort of live bootleg thing they did, which I think we reviewed on an early edition of this show. Def Leppard, Rocks, a live version of Rocks Off, probably a B-side, I'm not sure. And then Rainbow, All Night Long, from recorded live at Castle Donington 1980, and also included on the one of the albums I'm not waving around this time, which was the Monsters of Rock Donington 80 compilation. I'll bring out for another one for a future compilation special later. Status Quo, Roll Over Lay Down, recorded at the recorded in Southend at the Kerseye Club, which was on the pier at Southend if I remember rightly. Taken from their Quo Live EP from 1975. Whitesnake doing Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. This is a slightly edited version on here, but again it's a track that turned up on their Live in the Heart of the City double live album. UFO, Lights Out, from the classic UFO live album, Lights Out. Gillan, Unchain Your Brain, which we called it Nottingham Rock City. Don't know where that one comes from. Might be a B-side, might be an unreleased track, I don't know. Ends up with Black Sabbath, Paranoid, from the Free Trade Hall in Manchester, which eventually came out on the Live at Last, kind of retrospective Sabbath live album. Yeah, overall, like I said, another one I picked up because it had live recordings and bands that I've never heard of, or tracks that I've never heard before. Bearing in mind I'm about 17 and very naive about all things rock and roll. And yeah, a bit of a gem. Love the cover, and you know, the old I wouldn't recommend you do it these days, but you know, the old adage of sticking your head in the basement and letting the music blow your mind. Something I did back then. My ears don't thank me for it, but it happened. Yeah, Live and Heavy, 1981, NES Records. And something else I grabbed, picked this out of a bargain bin, again a good few years ago. This is oh, I can't remember what the name of what the label is. RKT Records. Yeah. Again, a label that I've not really heard of before. There's the centre. This is a rather from, well, when did this one come out? 1989. A rather nasty dream on Papplewick Pond, open bracket, frog is here. This is basically looking at kind of a compilation album that looks at a lot of UK thrash, grindcore, early black metal. You know, you've got highlight bands to look out for here include the fantastic Lawnmower Death, doing Do 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 Do, Metal Duck with Duckula's Assault. You've got Metal Messiah doing their classic track Bitch. Warfare with Metal Anarchy, absolutely superb kind of early black metal number, or punky black metal. First, other track bands in the Italian Mask, Attencraft, again great band. You know, Desecrator, First Blood, Sniper, and Maniac. Yeah, again, I think it's a bargain bin rack job, local record shop. Paid about 90p for it, maybe a pound. Grabbed it because I had a mate that was heavily into Metal Duck and Lawnmower Death. He dragged me along to see both bands when I was playing together at the Police of Perkin in Bristol. Had a bloody great evening out, and then couldn't find any of their proper albums, so I found this because it had a track by each on. Again, introduced me to some other stuff I wouldn't normally be listening to, like Italian, etc., and Attencraft. So pretty good stuff. Don't know if this, you know, very few of these are going to still be available. But again, if you're kind of collecting rather obscure kind of early British thrash, this is a good place to. This is a pretty good compilation album to add to the collection. Okay, next up we've got the only soundtrack album I've dragged out. I've got quite a few soundtrack albums. You know. If a movie's got a good soundtrack, I'll get it. But well, that's what I'll do. I'll used to get the soundtrack albums. But this is one I picked up for the pure what the hell value. This is All This and World War III, Riva Records, and it always World War II. Sorry, Riva Records, and it's 1976. Riva Records, that's right. Anyway, there's the front, there's the back, gatefold sleeve is thus. Now, oh yeah, it has inner sleeves with lyrics. Not often you get that with compilation albums. That's just one, but the other one's the same. Now, When I said this is a what the hell category record, I can mean it. Somewhere back in the early 1970s, a film producer probably smoked a little bit too much, or had some of that brown acid that had been knocking around off Woodstock, and came up with what he thought was a great idea. What he was going to do, he was going to collect about 2 hours of footage from the Second World War, all newsreel footage, taking it from the invasion of Poland and the rise of Hitler, invasion of Poland, Chamberlain, I have in my hand a piece of paper, etc., right through to Hiroshima and the atom bomb. And he was going to edit it together into a kind of the ultimate World War II documentary. Fair enough. But then someone came up with the idea of what we're going to do for a soundtrack. Should we get someone like Richard Burton to narrate it? Oh, no. What we'll do, we'll just get a load of seemingly random musicians. We'll get them to record Beatles numbers. And then, just for added weirdness, they'll perform them with the London Symphony Orchestra, with members of the London Philharmonic Orchestra helping out on some of the recordings as well. That's a terrible idea, I know, but think of the soundtrack album. Well, that was basically what happened. The film, I've never seen it, but I've read reviews that said it is absolute pants. It's a mess. It's had a couple of re-edits over the years, but it's still a bit of a mess. It really gets shown occasionally at film festivals, but that's about it. You know, it is universally panned. Yeah, but the soundtrack album just ends up as a kind of one of these bits of quirky weirdness. There are parts of this album that are amazing. Probably the best known cut on here is Elton John's version of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. A re-recorded version from his solo from the one that was a hit single with added orchestra, but it's a pretty good version. My favourite highlight on here is Keith Moon, the Who drummer, drunkenly slurring his way through When I'm 64, a track that worked amazingly. Other high points on here include Roy Wood's Polythene Pan, you know, the old wizard bloke. Status Quo's headbanging their way through Getting Better. It's okay, but you know, I don't know whether Quo were really into it when they did it. Where's it gone? I'm trying to think, where's it gone? Bee Gees doing Hello Goodbye and Sun King. Peter Gabriel does a pretty good version of Strawberry Fields Forever. Then you got some rather weird ones like Helen Reddy doing Fall on the Hill, Frankie Lane doing Maxwell's Silver Hammer, Leo Sayers' version of Let It Be, which is surprisingly quite competent. David Essex doing a quite nice version of Yesterday. Jeff Lynne kind of doing a kind of mash-up medley of Little Help My Friends and Nowhere Man. Then you got Richard Cochrane, Will Malone, and then I nearly forgot, Tina Turner's version of Come Together. Absolutely storming. Yeah, so overall it's a pretty good soundtrack album, and I would recommend that if you like really quirky, interesting stuff, and artists kind of working a little bit out of their comfort zone, doing stuff they wouldn't normally do with a symphony orchestra, go check this out. This is either on CD, I did check, but whatever you do, avoid the movie. Well, I don't know, I'll say avoid the movie, I'll just go on other people's recommendations, but you know, normally when something gets that universally panned, it's worth panning. But the album, this soundtrack album though, is quite good. 1978 Riva Records, All This and World War II, the original soundtrack. Next up, I've got another label sampler. This is 1970, this came out. This is Heads In from NEMS Records. There's the front with a nice motorcycle there. The back is really quite dull. Has a gatefold. which is used to display some of A&M's roster on here. You got the Strobes, bit of Supertramp, Flying Burrito Brothers, Philox, Humble Pie. And yeah, this is another one interesting one I picked up. Again, I think it's a charity shop find. Again, I've got this early 80s. I just saw the cover, saw it had a motorbike, and saw a couple of names I recognised, like Humble Pie and Supertramp, and I thought, I'll give it a go. It's pretty good. I quite enjoyed this one. For me, the opening cut is probably the favourite track on this album, which is the Strobes doing a classic song called The Battle. Strobes are a band that I've always had a big soft spot for. Unfortunately, not got that much of them in my collection, just a couple of downloaded albums, but or sort of like, you know, purchased downloads. But overall, you know, I love the Strobes. Even saw them live back in the 90s. Of course, the band's still going strong. Other highlights on here, the Flying Burrito Brothers. This was my first introduction to them. Again, a band I've developed a soft spot for, and if you hadn't heard them, they're kind of proto southern rock. They're kind of they're sort of, you know, they're along with like bands like Creedence Clearwater Revival, laying the ground for bands like Skinner and that to follow up with. I mentioned you've got Supertramp, Nothing to Show, early track from their Indelibly Stamped album. Then you've got closing cut, Humble Pie, One-Eyed Trouser Snake Rumba, which is the title track does a, yeah, it's typical Humble Pie. It's Steve Marriott doing his fantastic guitar twiddling stuff. But then it led me into other stuff. There's a bit of folky stuff on here. There's Philox, a kind of folk singing comedian doing 10 cents a coup. People I've never heard of, Don Preston, Sean Phillips, Lee Michaels, a guy called Ron Davis, all kind of in that kind of folk rock kind of vein. It was his early 70s, so you know, late 60s, early 70s, and folk rock was still a big thing back then. And then there's a band called Brainchild with a track called The Cage, lifted from their album, which got a title called The Healing of the Lunatic Owl. An album I have been looking for many years, even though I've been in trouble finding it as a paid download. I don't want to pirate it, but you know, the Brainchild track on here is absolutely superb, kind of very, very psychedelic, kind of psychedelic rock, and makes me kind of want to check out more of their stuff. But you know, one of these obscure bands. But you know, I have at least one track by them on here, so you know, well done, NEMS Records. Yeah, again, just a really sweet little sampler. Leads me on to this one. Again, another label sampler. This is Speed Kills 2 by Under One Flag, and I think this is 1987 as well. I shall have a look. Yeah, there's the spinner there. 1988. 86, sorry, 86. Now, Under One Flag were spin-off from the classic UK rock indie label Music for Nations, and Under One Flag was a label to deal with the more kind of heavier stuff, some of the more kind of thrash metal that was coming out at the time. And this is a really good snapshot of the world thrash metal scene at the time. It has got a couple of fairly well-known bands on here. You got Anthrax doing Gung Ho. I'm not a massive Anthrax track, but I do like that song. Agent of Steel, you know, a band that promised much, didn't really deliver, but you know, I got them on here doing Agents of Steel. Halloween, Ride the Sky, absolutely storming track. And of course Onslaught with Fight with the Beast, from the album that would came out a little bit after this, The Force, which is still one of the greatest thrash metal albums of all time. And that's not just me saying that, you know, that's kind of a universally accepted truth, that the Onslaught's The Force is one of the best thrash metal albums ever recorded. And I'm not just saying that because I know Onslaught, I'm saying that because it's true. Other points on here, this is a band that kind of got Bathory with a track called I'm Possessed, kind of post-Venom, primordial black metal. Probably one of my first kind of, I had a couple of Venom bits and pieces in my collection, but the track that kind of opened me up to what was happening in Scandinavia, the black metal scene at the time, led me on to getting a couple of Bathory albums, and I used to because of the kind of thrashy stuff at the time when I used to DJ at clubs, I used to carry this album in my record box, and sometimes if it was if I thought things were a bit boring, I'd drop the Bathory I'm Possessed in just for the hell of it. Especially between a couple of hair metal songs that had all the girlies dancing, it would scare them shitless. But anyway, other tracks in here: Whiplash, Iron Angel, Canadian band Razor. A couple of bands I've never heard of, like Brain Fever. I've not heard much since, Iron Angel, etc. Just a really fine kind of snapshot of what was happening at the time on the thrash metal scene, and good stuff. I have got volumes 1 and 3 of this as well, which are equally as good, but I'll drag this one out because this is the one that I still treasure and listen to most. Okay, next up we have another label sampler. This is Island Records, and this is a thing called Nice Enough to Eat, and I'll tell you when this came out in a minute, but I think this is late 60s, early 70s. There's the front, there's the back. There we are, Island pink label there. Do you know it doesn't actually say, hasn't got a release date on it, but looking at the track listing and what I know about the bands that I do know a little bit about, I would say this was 1968 or 1969. Again, a rather sweet little snapshot of what was happening on the primarily the UK scene at the time. You got cuts by Fairport Convention. They doing Cajun Woman. Very early Mott the Hoople with from their debut album Down at the Crossroads, and that's kind of kind of bluesy kind of early Mott the Hoople were pretty good. Mott the Hoople are a damn good band anyway, but I really like the early stuff. Spooky Tooth's Better By You, Better Than Me, which probably better known for the Judas Priest cover. This is the original, and they make interesting playing back to back if you ever get a chance. Jethro Tull from Stand Up, their debut album, Used to Know, from their kind of folky blues period. Was it their second album? I can't remember. My tongue just slipped out my brain, but never mind. An early Free track from Woman by Free, sorry. Heavy Jelly, which are a band that I never really sort of got beyond a couple of odd tracks that I picked up, but compilation albums. But again, interesting concept album. You got some Blodwyn Pig on here, which is Mick Abrahams after he left Jethro Tull. Early Traffic track with 40,000 Headmen. Nick Drake, the kind of folky bloke with Time Has Told Me. Quintessence, nice bit of early prog maybe a bit of jazz fusion in there as well, kind of cool stuff. Dr. Strangely Strange, again another band that I should really listen to more, because the one track that I have got, which is on this compilation album, is odd but oddly normal. Strangely Strange but oddly normal, yeah, cracking song. And then you got the kind of King Crimson blasting through 21st Century Schizoid Man. Yeah, just this album, just playing it on its own during the evening is just a bit of a kind of nice romp through sort of like late 60s kind of psych and folk and progressive rock. Yeah, again, this was a charity shop find. I only think I paid 50p for this. Yeah, and a bit of a gem. So yeah, Island Records, nice enough to eat. Approximately 1969. I may be wrong, but I think about then. Correct me in the comments if I am. Leads me on to the last one. I thought I struggled talking about these, but I'm flying through them. Go back to Epic Records, and something that came out in 1985. Here we go. This is New Gladiators. So Epic Records. There's the front. There's the back. And if you like the kind of nice barbarian warrior artwork on the front there. Hi Rich. I'll pull this out. Now this has never been on my wall. But it contains a massive poster of the album artwork. Which I kept this one for that because I like that, and I thought this is so metal and cheese that this deserves to be framed into a big frame and banged on the wall. Never got round to doing it, so it just remains. I suppose it, you know, not so adds value, but kind of for completeness, it should really live in the album sleeve. But yeah. Again, this is a label sampler, 85 stuff that would have been coming out around about then on Epic Records. Again, this is an album that I picked up around about the time it came out, and because yeah, these things were cheap. The record labels would bang these out at kind of a discount price. You know, back then, if a full-length album would cost you on vinyl sort of £4.99, £5, you'll get these for £2.99 because again, as I said, this is pre-internet days. This was their way of getting some of their new signings and new products out in at least odd sample tracks into the ears of people that may want to go, oh that's good, I'll buy the full album. And this is again an interesting one. Yeah, opening cut is a back-to-back by Danish band Pretty Maids. Again, the first time I'd ever heard Pretty Maids, and I've now got several albums by them, and you know, still collect their stuff, at least digitally, up until this day. Band called Vengeance, who I can't remember anything about. Obviously, I haven't got to admit, I haven't played this album for a while. I'll give it a spin after I finish recording, but obviously, you know, that didn't really strike me as something that's worth remembering. Trust, the French band again. Post Nico McBrain this time with I Shall Return. Black and Blue, who are another Swedish band if I remember rightly. Got a track called Auto Blast. Got a few tracks on there. Got a few bits and pieces by Black and Blue. They weren't outstanding, but they were competent. Then you got Hanoi Rocks High School from their album Two Steps from the Move. I think their final album before they broke up after Razzle's death. But cracking track, sleazy bit of hair, proto hair sleeve rock. Then you got Heavy Christmas by 2020 Volt, a track that I still play every year on BCFM on my Christmas special show because it's just a heavy Christmas, you know, it's a heavy metal Christmas record, and those aren't that common. Well, commoner now, but when this came out, it was quite unknown. On the other side, kicks off with Madam X, which is proto kind of Sebastian Bach, the bloke that went on to form Skid Row. Yeah, track from him. Come on, come one, come all. Not a bad band. I have got their We Reserve the Right album. It's quite listenable. Kick-Axe, name rings a bell, can't really remember that much about them. Quiet Riot, Party All Night from Condition Critical. Condition Critical is not quite as an essential album, as my opinion, as Metal Health, but still it's not bad. Then you got Fast Way, All Fired Up. Fast Eddie Clark, what more do you want? Horizon, and then Stevie, which is basically Stevie Nicks, with a track called Without You from her album Gypsy. Makes a kind of interesting kind of AOR-esque ending. Yeah, again, something that I picked up pretty cheap and introduced me to a few more bands, and really kind of digged it ever since. So, yeah, 1985, the new Gladiators, Epic Records. So, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed our compilation special. Next week I'll be back to normal. Then I've got a couple of weeks where I may be kind of doing something a little bit different again, because basically I'm on jury duty, and kind of with 2 radio shows and a couple of bands to organise, and plus doing these, time is going to be pushed because I'm going to be one of the good men and true. So I will put a video out, but it might be something a little bit different. It might be just a kind of 10-minute whirlwind blast through some favourite singles or something. But anyway, until then, links to the radio shows are down there and over there. Finger dance, the missus, do the finger dance, do the finger dance, everybody do the finger dance. My missus complains if I don't do the finger dance. And there you are, my love, I've even put a song in for you. And yeah, like, subscribe, share. I'm not after making money out of this. This channel is isn't monetized, and it'd be very unlikely it ever will be. This is just me sharing my love of record collecting and good music with primarily a load of friends, but other people on YouTube and Facebook as well, who kind of do watch. So that's it. Until next week, peeps. I love you all, and I'm out of here. Bye.